Alright, let's look at the third game from the complex linear set. They tell us that there are 5 runners: Larry, Ned, Olivia, Patricia, and Sonia, and we need to put these runners in lanes 1 through 5. If they left it there, that would just be a straight up linear game, but they actually give us another characteristic, which is the charities. So that's another variable set. And we also we need to basically match these charities up with the runners. But because the runners are going to be placed in lanes 1 through 5, what we really need to do is to place the charities in lanes 1 through 5 also. So if you look at the setup that I've drawn on the board, we put the runners on top and the charities on bottom. Of course, you could do it the other way, it makes no difference. Uh, each one gets its own line, right? Because there are 5 charities and there are 5 lanes, and each charity is going to get exactly 1 lane, and each lane is going to get exactly 1 charity, and it's the same deal with the runners. So this is a classic advanced linear game. If you could look at this setup and you compare it to, for example, the setup that we've for some of the advanced linear games we've already done, you can see that they look very, very similar. Okay, and this is a setup that you're going to use a lot whenever you come across advanced or complex linear games. All right, so this is our setup. Let's look at the rules they give us. The first rule they give us is that the runner representing K is assigned to lane 4. So let me just do one thing. Okay, so the runner representing K is assigned to lane 4. So we'll just put K right there. That's easy enough. The next rule says Patricia is assigned to the only lane between the lanes of the runners representing F and G. Okay, read that again. Patricia is assigned to the only lane between the lanes of the runners representing F and G. So what it says is that there's exactly 1 lane in between the charities F and G. In other words, it's going to be F slash G blank F slash G. And then in that lane that's between F and G, Patricia is going to be the runner that's there. Okay, so to speed things up, I drew a few of these things ahead of time. Here's how we might draw this rule. Okay, because you can see we've left a space between F and G, and we don't know which one's going to come first, so we had to do F slash G, and then a space, and then G slash F, and then there's P in the middle as the runner in the lane between F and G. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And this rule, it took us a second to think about it and to draw it, but now that we understand it, it should be very, very useful to us, especially if we can narrow down where the F and the G can go. And anticipating what we are going to do, we can see that K, for example, is already taking up one of the spaces. So maybe we can find limited placement for this big block. But we'll see that as we go forward. What's the next rule? It says there are exactly 2 lanes between Olivia's lane and the lane of the runner representing G. So here again, I would read the rule again. There are exactly 2 lanes between Olivia's lane and the lane of the runner representing G. So they don't tell us, just like they didn't tell us whether F or G comes first, just that there was 1 in between them. They don't tell us whether O or P come first, just that there are exactly 2 lanes, O or G. They don't tell us whether O or G comes first, just that there are 2 lanes in between O and the G. So again, to save a little time, I drew this up, and the way we might do this is like this. Okay, I need to make this box a little bigger. So the way we might do it is like this. And let's take a second to dissect, what I did here. So, and then these are separate. These are the 2 possibilities, okay? One, we put O first, and then we're like, okay, leave 2 lanes blank. There are the 2 lanes that are blank, and then there's the G. But if the G comes first, which is a possibility since they didn't give us the order, then it would look like this. There would be a G, and then 2 blanks, and then there's the space where the O goes. Okay, so these are the 2 possibilities for this rule. Again, a little bit of a hassle to draw, and to think about the two possibilities instead of just one. But once we get a handle on this rule, especially within the context of the other rules, this should really be very useful to us. And the last rule says Sonia is assigned to a higher number lane than a lane to which Ned is assigned. Straightforward rule. There's only one thing you need to be careful of here, and that is that the higher lanes are on the right, okay? And the lower lanes are over here on the left. So if Sonia is assigned to a higher number lane, then she's going to be to the right of Ned, okay? So we'll just be like Ned comes to the left of Sonia, like that. All right? So these are our three rules that we were not able to put into the diagram. The very first rule we put directly into the diagram. K is in lane 4. So let's think about how these rules are going to play out. All right? Let's start with the first rule. Well, actually, let's look at the last rule really quickly, because that's the seemingly the simplest rule to implement into our setup. N before S. Hopefully you know how to do this. Here's N and S up here. And what we're saying is that N has to come before S. So, for example, N could certainly not go last, because then he could not be before S. And S could not be first, because if S were first, that would leave no room for Ned to go before. Okay? So that's the last rule. That was this rule. And we implemented part of that on our diagram, but we'll still need to pay attention to this going forward. Let's look at this rule now. Okay? Let's first of all just think about the easy implementation. Let's look at the P and the not laws. So P is a runner, okay? And we can see here that P has to have at least one space before, at least one lane before the lane in which P is in, and at least one lane after. So right away we know that P cannot be last. And I put it next to the S, but this is a not law. This is saying that P cannot go here. Okay, and at the same time, P cannot go here. So we'll put the P underneath the fifth spot to indicate that that is also a no-go for P. Okay, that's the easy part of that rule. But what about the block as a whole? We need to think about how this block as a whole could possibly fit in to the diagram, to the diagram given the other rules. So, for example, we know that F and G cannot go here. Okay, let's start with what we know. We know there's a K here. So for sure, we know that F and G cannot go in spot 4. Is there any other spot that would be a place where F and G cannot go, and it's going to be related to the fact that K is in 4? Okay, so is there another spot where F and G, where neither of them could go, and I'm telling you that it's related to the fact that K is in 4? So if you really want to think about it and you haven't figured it out, and it might take you a second, then you can pause the video. But I'm going to just keep things moving. So we know that here in spot 2, there cannot be an F or a G. Why? Because if we put the F or G here, then the other one, like let's say we put the F here, then the G would have to go here, right? But it can't because the K is there. And if we put the G here, the F would have to go here, and it can't because the K is there. So we know for sure that this spot cannot be F, and it cannot be G. All right? So I'm just putting it under to say that it can't go there. But I don't think that's all. Okay, so far it looks like we've narrowed down F and G to 1, 3, and 5. Let's actually look at the, the F/G blank F/G. All right? How many ways could that actually fit in to these spots on the bottom? We already said, well, it can't ever go. None of them can go in spot 2, and none of them can go in spot 4. So they have 3 spots left that are available to them, 1, 3, and 5. So how many ways can we do this part, right? F/G blank G/F, given that the only spots they're allowed to go in are 1, 3, and 5. Again, you can pause the video and think about it carefully, but the answer is that either I'm going to put one of them here and one of them here, in other words, one of them in 1 and the other one in 3, or I'm going to put one of them in 3 and the other one in 5, right? So there's only really 2 ways it can go, and the temptation, and this is what I'm going to do, is to draw those out, because there's only 2 ways that the GF block can go. And what else? The other thing you'll notice is that regardless of which of those ways I choose, whether I go 1, 3, right, 1, 3, or 3, 5, I'm always going to have to use the 3 for either the F or the G. All right? Hopefully that makes sense. I'm just going to repeat it, I'm always going to have to use the third spot for either the F or the G. Okay, so let's draw these two templates. And hopefully, this is going to take a second, okay? But hopefully it will be very useful to us. So, I need another spot here. All right, and bear with me. And if you haven't drawn the templates, you can try to go faster than me because the pen will move faster than my cursor. So you can try to get ahead of me and draw the two templates out and see what you can figure out along the way. So one possible, we said the K is always here on both templates. And then we said one possibility was to put one of them here, here, and then the other one here and here. And then the other possibility was to put one of them here, and then the other one here. Okay? These are the two possibilities. And the reason that I want to draw them out is because there's more stuff we can figure out if we look at these two templates individually. That's usually the test that you want to use to decide whether or not to draw the templates out. You want to think about, if I do take the time to draw those two templates out, will there be more stuff, more deductions that I can make in each template individually? Okay? And right away your answer would be, well, yeah, I can at least place the P for sure. Okay? Because I know the P is going to go in the space, in the lane in between F and G. So at least that would be able to place the P for each particular template. Okay? But and that might be good enough to draw the templates out, to give you a reason to draw the templates out. But here we can actually go further if we look at it a little bit more carefully. Especially if we combine it with the next rule. So that's what I mean when I say look at it a little more carefully. I mean is, let's use this rule now between the O and the G, which says again that there has to be two spaces in between where the O is and where the G is. Okay? So let's think about it in this template. Okay? So if I put the G here, then the O would go here. Okay, so if I put the G in 1, then the O would go in 4. And that would seem to work just fine. But what happens if I put the G here? And the answer is that you would end up violating the rule that we're talking about, this rule about that there are two spaces between the O and the G. Because if I put the G here, I can go this way, blank, blank, and I run out of room to put the O, and the same thing on the other side. So this actually cannot be the G. It has to be the F, right? Because of the rule between O and G. And so I know now, in this particular template, that the G is going to have to be in spot 1, and the F is going to have to be in spot 3. Okay, and if the G is here, where's the O going to go? It's going to go right here. Okay, and the same logic holds on this second side. Okay, if I put the G here, then I have to go blank, blank, and I'm supposed to put the O over here, but there's no room. And same thing on the other side. I go this way, blank, blank. I'm supposed to put the O over here. There's no room. So this has to be the F. And this has to be the G. Okay? And then if the G is here, that would mean the O has to be here. Okay? So these are two templates, and we may be able to go further, but I'm running out of time, 15-minute time limit on YouTube, so I'm going to stop here. But we got at least the vast majority of everything that we wanted to do in our setup. We got it done, and including these two templates, which are going to be very useful to us. If there's anything unclear in the way that I built those templates, you can sit and play with it for a while and then figure out why I came with these two templates, or you can just rewind the video and watch it again, and hopefully the explanation I gave you was clear enough that if you listen to it a second time or a third time, then it'll become clear to you. Okay, let's do the questions in the next video.